Hello, my name is Mauro Guillén. I'm a professor at the Wharton School. Today, I would like to tell you about my new nano tool, about 4 steps to position your organization for success in a time of crisis. You see, you need to have 2 goals in mind if you want to overcome the effects of this crisis. The first is to steady the ship, and the second is to steer the ship in the right direction so that your company or your organization can take advantage of the economic recovery. Some people believe that this crisis is unprecedented and that therefore we cannot learn anything from the past and we cannot plan for it. Let me tell you this. The crisis is indeed unprecedented. It started with both a demand shock and a supply shock. Consumers stopped going to the shopping mall, and companies could no longer find in the marketplace the parts and components that they needed to assemble their final product, or they could not source their final product to bring it to market. But the fact that the crisis is unprecedented doesn't mean that we cannot plan for it. In fact, every military leader will tell you that plans are worthless. However, planning is necessary. So these are the 4 steps that you need to take in order to be successful in the weeks and months ahead. The first is you must create a war room. The second, you must ensure business continuity, and you need to repair your supply chain if it's broken. The third is that you have to engage both employees and customers. And lastly, you need to prepare for the recovery. Let's examine the first step. You have to create a war room. That's how Winston Churchill called his executive committee to make decisions during World War II. President Kennedy called it the ExComm for Executive Committee during the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 1960s. You see, you have to be very careful about selecting the members of that committee. It doesn't have to be necessarily all of the top managers at the firm or your organization, but it has to be the ones that are relevant for this moment. You need to set rules about information gathering, about deliberation, and about decision making. And then you have to have a communication strategy with employees, with customers, and with other stakeholders that makes sense. You need to appoint an explainer-in-chief. That can be the CEO or it can be somebody else. The second step, you need to ensure business continuity, and you need to repair your supply chain if it's broken. Well, in order to do that, you need to look both inside and outside of the organization. Inside of the organization, you need to redeploy your human and physical assets, knowing that, for example, your employees may no longer be able to go to the office or to the factory. Outside, you need to essentially work with your suppliers or secure new suppliers. And you need to make your supply chain perhaps not as efficient as it was in the past, but you have to make it more reliable. And by the way, there are new technologies that may help your company or your organization cope with the problems related to the supply chain. You can use 3D printing. In fact, some companies around the world right now are making parts and components using 3D printers that then make it into those respirators that are so badly needed at hospitals around the world. The third step, you need to engage. You need to engage in particular your employees. You have to pay attention to their levels of stress, whether there is burnout or not. And you have to motivate them to be productive in a very new, different situation. You have to deploy technology, especially communications technology, effectively. And of course, you have to convey to your employees the idea that they come first and that your business goals come second, at least during the crisis. Otherwise, your employees may feel that you do not care about them. And then regarding customers, you see, you may not be able now to sell your product or your service to your customers. Or you may be facing a situation in which there is hugely reduced demand for your products and services. But this is what you need to do. What you need to do is to continue engaging all of your customers. Because you see, when the economy recovers, you will need to sell your products and services to them. And if you do not engage them during the crisis, they may not be there for you when the economy comes back. And finally, the fourth step. You need to prepare for the recovery. I've already been mentioning this several times. You need to steer the ship in the right direction in addition to steadying the ship. Now, in order to do that, you need to anticipate what shape the recovery is going to take. Is it going to be a U-shaped recovery, which is relatively slow? Or is it going to be a V-shaped recovery or a hockey stick recovery, which is going to be very fast? Well, depending on the shape of the recovery, you will need to allocate resources and make decisions in a different way. And lastly, don't forget about pent-up demand. The demand for some of your products or your services will be much greater than during normal times in the weeks and months immediately following the beginning of the economic recovery. You need to plan for that very, very carefully. So let me remind you about the two basic principles here. The first principle is, in addition to steadying the ship, you also need to steer it in the right direction. And second, as military leaders always say, plans are worthless during a crisis. However, planning is absolutely essential. If you use these four principles, then you can take the 4 steps that I've told you about. Create a war room, ensure that you have business continuity and that you repair the broken supply chain, engage your customers and your employees, and prepare for the recovery. Thank you so much for listening.